How can you train your grit? How can you become more disciplined, persevering, and resilient towards your key goals? What helps you to develop grit in the first place? And is this something you can even train? I was absolutely fascinated by Angela Duckworth's book, Grit. I learned so many cool, interesting, amazing insights. And in this episode, I'm going to share some of the core components and some of my key lessons from this book, Grit. Angela begins the book by explaining that in West Point Military Academy in the US, for the first years, there is a summer intensive of 7 weeks called the Beast Barracks. And during this time, they have all very intensive military training, physically, mentally, learning, and it's every single day of the week. They have no breaks aside from meals, and it's a very ongoing, hard time. And what they found is that the people that stick it through after the 7 weeks weren't necessarily the most intelligent, the most talented, the ones with the stronger IQ. What they found is that it was a direct correlation with how gritty they are. And grit is that ability to stick through with what is important for you. So something you've decided is important for you and you stick at it. And it is actually something you can train, and it is something that you can measure. So in the book, and I invite you to also check it out online, I'll read a few of them, Angela has developed a grit test. And some of the questions are things like, new ideas and projects sometimes distract me from the previous one. And then you rate this from a scale from 1 to 10, 1 to 5. Setbacks don't discourage me. I don't give up easily. And then you rate that. I often set a goal, but later choose to pursue a different one. Or I finish whatever I begin. These are all ways that you can measure your grit. And there are two key elements here. One of them is passion and the other is perseverance. Passion is simply an interest that you have and something you really just care about. And this is a fundamental element to sticking at something. Let's face it, if you're not really interested or passionate about what you're doing, why would you stick at it? And passion means what you're willing to suffer for. So it makes sense that as you're persevering, as things get hard, as you meet setbacks, if you're really passionate and you really care, you will stick at it. Persevering is simply that ability to, in spite of setbacks, in spite of obstacles, you keep going. Now, some people are very passionate artists, a passionate person in their work. They're very, very passionate. They're not very persevering though. So they care about it and they might start, for example, someone who's always wanted to write a novel, and they start and they'll begin things here and there. They're passionate, but they don't really persevere. They don't really stick at it. So they like grit because they don't follow things through. They begin, they have that enthusiasm, that passion. Maybe they talk about these things a lot. Maybe they think about these things a lot, but they don't really carry it through. So they have that passion element, but they don't have that perseverance. Other people, very persevering. They will just continue and grind and be consistent and be disciplined all the time. Maybe deep down, they're not that interested. They don't really care. And so it's going to be hard for them to push through at some point in spite of perseverance and discipline and habit, because they don't really care deep down about that work or the exercise or whatever it is that they're putting in place. We really want this synergy between both passion and perseverance. And when we have both, this actually is more valuable than simply having talent. As Angela Duckworth explains in the book, having talent is great, and it can obviously be a bonus and it's fantastic, but you still need that extra grit on top of talent anyway in order to develop a skill. Because if you have an initial talent for music, but you're never practicing, you won't be a great musician. So either way, you need talent, and then on top of that, the grit. But then you need it a second time. Again, you need more effort again to turn that skill from something like you can play an instrument to you're doing a whole concert. That's another time where you need more grit and more perseverance and more passion and more energy. And so we need this multiple times. And the thing is, you can get away with not having talent for many different areas. He gives examples of, for instance, John Irving, who's a writer, who said he wasn't particularly gifted at writing. He didn't do well in literature at school. He was a very slow learner. And yet he's written a lot of very famous books, such as The World According to go up. All these famous books, he's written a lot. He's a prolific writer, and his books, if you've seen them, they're really thick. And so he was able to manage in spite of not having talent. Now, sure, if he, on top of that, he had more initial talent for writing, it would maybe have been a boost, but he still made it. And if you contrast that with so many people out there, and I know quite a few, just think of it off the top of my head, who have a natural talent for words, for metaphors, for putting things in beautiful ways, who are naturally gifted writers, but they never write because they're maybe not as passionate or interested, or they don't persevere as much. If you don't have the grit and the passion and perseverance, it doesn't matter how much initial talent you may have, whether it's for writing or business or speaking or exercising. It doesn't matter if you're not actually doing it. So if you do have talent, it's a boost, it's a bonus, for sure it makes a difference. And I think it makes a difference at the very top. So if we're looking at Olympic level swimmers, you could argue that Michael Phelps had both tremendous talent and grit. And so that gave extra sort of competitive advantage right at the very top. But if you're not an Olympic swimmer, probably if you just want to be a really, 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 really great swimmer, grit is sufficient. You don't actually need the talent. And it goes for public speaking, it goes for writing, this also goes for any form of exercise. As long as you don't have a sort of physical disability that prevents you from doing it, I believe that most things can be trained. I remember once I was doing a triathlon, the super sprint in Barcelona, and I met this woman who said she was terrible at sports at school, last in her class consistently, and now she was this super, super triathlete, and she was even going on some races where she was guiding people who were blind and helping them run, and I was just totally blown away. And it wasn't talent, that was sheer grit. She was just absolutely passionate and really persevering. And this is what it takes to build grit. So how do you build this sort of passion, perseverance, and continue? So there are different practices you can put in place to help you to develop this grit. One of them is called deliberate practice. This helps you to continuously progress. Deliberate practice is not just systematically doing the same thing over and over again without any rules, without any direction. Because if you just always show up and run 20 minutes, you're just always going to be someone who can run 20 minutes. If you're looking to run a marathon or to become a great runner, then you constantly need to measure how you're progressing and have certain goals in place. This is why just practicing every single day doesn't actually help you progress, but practicing every single day with slight improvement helps you. A simple example in my life is chess. I play chess regularly. I've played since the age of 8, yet I haven't really progressed. And the reason for that is I don't really set high standards. I haven't joined a chess club. I don't read books on chess and look at strategies and try and use a new technique or new tool. So we sort of stay at the same level. Sometimes I think it'd be nice to learn and improve and be better at chess. And other times I think, well, we don't have to improve in every single thing all of the time. So I leave that as a sort of less progressing area. But that's a perfect example of something I've done very regularly and haven't really progressed at, versus if you contrast, for instance, speaking, I aim every time, whether it's on podcast or YouTube or a keynote speech that I'm giving, to improve something. Maybe I'll look at storytelling. Maybe I'll think of how clearly I express myself. Maybe I'll try and implement more pauses. Maybe I will try and improve my slides. So I'm always looking at improving it. And then I review how my speech was, and then I work on it again. And this is deliberate practice. I do the same in coaching, because these are areas that matter most to me. Chess is a fun hobby, but it's not something fundamentally matters most in my life. Speaking, coaching, this is my business, my whole life. Therefore, it's so relevant for me to consistently and continuously work on improving them. So deliberate practice really helps you to constantly make progress on what matters for you, not just showing up and taking action, but actually improving it. Another important point, and I'd say the second point, is that there's a purpose. If all of your actions and goals and effort go in one direction, this will really support you to have more grit, because you will see what it all leads to. It's having that vision, that mission. This is what I talk about right now when I spoke about speaking or coaching. This all goes in that direction, which is that I want to support people in the world and great leaders to lead from a place of greater intention and purpose and clarity, and to have greater results in their life and their business, to be high performing. And so that really is my mission, to lead with intention and purpose and joy. And from there, I'm able to speak, coach, do podcasts, write articles, write books, but I have a clear purpose and a clear mission. If you're able to bring all of your actions together, if you're able to all sync it in one direction so that it all aligns in one way, this will really support you to be more gritty, because everything then ties together and it gives you that extra support, that extra hope, that extra motivation that you need, especially when you come across setbacks. Look, I don't wake up every day fancying filming myself for half an hour talking about stuff. But I am able to do that because I really care about the content, and I really care about the impact, and I really care about these topics, and therefore I'm able to show up. And it's exactly the same. Michael Phelps didn't fancy every single day going in the pool and training for hours and hours. I'm sure some days he thought it was super fun, and other days he didn't want to do it at all. Yet he had that clear purpose, that clear direction, and this enabled him to show up every single day. And the last point I'd say here around grit is, at the beginning, it can be hard to find what it is you want to stick at. And this is why it's great to try lots of different things. Angela explains it beautifully in the book when she talks about just trying out lots of different areas, different hobbies, different interests. And it's okay at the beginning not to stick at one thing, because you don't know what that one thing or direction is. That one direction can be multiple components, but they all sort of join together in one direction. And the beginning, you're not sure what that is. And so it's fine to like pivot and find different things and test different areas of interest, because that can help you to find what's one that you actually care about, that you're passionate about. I tried a ton of different hobbies growing up, and not many have stuck, but I still play music and I still sing. And that was one that was relevant and important for me in terms of hobbies and interests. So if you try and you do lots of different ones, this can help you to find what you want to be gritty about. So what we've covered so far is the importance of deliberate practice, which is where you constantly measure the progress you're making, you set clear goals and standards, and you level up and upgrade. And then it can be really useful to have a coach or a mentor or a club or something that you're part of that helps you. Just like I mentioned, if I was part of a chess club, probably it would help me then to improve and have a deliberate practice within chess, for instance. And then we looked at having that clear purpose. When you have that clear direction and it all ties together, it makes it so much easier to be passionate and to be persevering towards these goals. And lastly, we looked at exploring different interests to find what are the core areas, or what is the core thing that you're willing to be gritty about and to persevere. And then if you want to explore how you can be more gritty, well, first of all, highly recommend the book, as she did write a whole book on this and studied it for years. And no, she isn't sponsoring this video or podcast episode. It's an amazing book. But also, just look for yourself, when were times you were able to be very gritty, and what was different then? Was it the level of commitment? Was it how passionate you were? Was it that you had a great support group? Because I often feel we learn so much from our own failures, but we also learn so much from our own successes. And I think this is something that we don't hear often enough. When you listen to podcasts or videos or whatever, people are always giving lots of advice, like I just did, deliberate practice and purpose, all these things, and they're great. But we've also have our own experience. If you're watching or listening to this, you've probably been through a lot. And I'm sure there were times in your life where you were very gritty, where you really stuck at it, whether it was to learn that language, whether it was to get healthy, and whether it was to kickstart your business, whether it was to manage a relationship where you had like some internal struggle. There was somewhere at some point you really stuck at it and you really persevered and you got the result that you were after. And my question to you is, what was different then to whatever goal you're trying to be gritty about now and achieve and persevere in spite of obstacles? What was different then? And my guess is that the why and the reason behind it was stronger. So if you suddenly had to learn that language, or you wouldn't have a visa and you get kicked out of the country, probably it was easier then to learn that language than it is today to get up early and do CrossFit, because the why or the reason behind it isn't as strong. And the solution to that then is to find how can you strengthen that why? How can you make it a must? How can you make it so important that it becomes a no-brainer, and then therefore you're able to be gritty? So often we focus on the actions, whether you're trying to do a specific action in your business to kick off a project, whether you want to go more often to the gym and eat healthy. We're looking at the actions very often. Oh, I just want to eat more healthy. I want to go to bed earlier. These are the actions. But we forget to look a step back and to ask ourselves, what do I need to think? What do I need to believe? How do I need to see myself? What's important for me? And what's a core why for me to do those actions? Because guess what? If you're not taking those actions, probably your core reason behind it isn't that strong. It's not that strong. If it becomes super important, if it's a matter of life or death, you'll do it. So what do you need to do to make the stakes higher? In a previous episode, I remember I spoke about how we need to increase the pain. And it's true, because if it's just a mild background pain of, it would be nice if I did this, or I feel a bit bad, I don't do that more, I'm a bit annoyed, I don't do this. That's not enough. That's not enough of a leverage on yourself to get yourself out of bed on you, to get yourself to exercise. You need to make it really strong. And the way to make it really strong is to increase the pain and increase the pleasure of taking the action. So increase the pain of not taking the action. You fast forward 5-10 years from now and you feel how disappointed and frustrated and upset you'd be if you haven't made any progress on this goal, on this habit, on this project, and you feel how painful it is fully for a while, like for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour, really feel how painful it would be to wake up a year from now, 5 years from now, and you haven't written that book, mastered that language, done that marathon, whatever it is. And if you don't feel a really strong pain, is this really a goal you're after anyway? And so ask yourself, how would you feel 5, 10, 20 years from now if you haven't progressed on this? Feel the pain, use that as a leverage, and make that why really strong. I think all of personal development could be summarized in have a really strong why and commit. Commit to taking those actions. Because everything we talk about here, building grit, building confidence, having more self-discipline, being able to overcome imposter syndrome, having a clear purpose in your life, changing your life around, all of these things come down to why do you want this in the first place? Why does it matter so much to you? And if you're able to be crystal clear on why this matters, and then from that place, fully commit that as of today, you're going to take those actions, you're going to show up, you're going to change your attitude, you're going to be proactive, whatever it is, then it's easy. Then you can do the stuff. And I think very often when we're watching YouTube videos or listening to podcasts, there's a sort of hum in the back of our minds. This is something we kind of want to do. Oh, I wish I was the sort of person who's a bit more disciplined, a bit more productive, a bit more gritty. That sounds kind of good. That feels kind of good. I don't really like being inconsistent. I don't really like being lazy. But there's no real commitment. So you can watch hours of YouTube or listen to hours of podcasts or read loads of books. But if you haven't really connected deep down to why this matters to you, why do you want to show up differently? Why is it important for you to be proactive, to exercise, to eat healthily? But deep why, and fully commit, then everything gets easy. I think this is just really important to say, because I can talk about grit or self-discipline all day long, and there are lots of amazing concepts, amazing examples, really inspiring things in here. If you haven't really decided deep down that this even matters to you, won't make any difference. In my personal case, in my own story, and I've also seen this with my clients, it's generally because at some point the pain becomes intolerable. Either the pain of being that sort of person who doesn't take action or doesn't do the things they say they're going to do, or the pain of seeing who you could be if you only did things differently, or just those brief moments where you just think, oh, I don't want to be the sort of person who is late or doesn't show up or does a sloppy job or whatever. And that pain has to be quite strong. And then when that happens, then you find the content, you read a book or two, you read a few articles, and off you go. Then it's easy, because the principles, they're there, they're important, like deliberate practice and that clear purpose and all these things that really help. But they only help once you've made that initial commitment, and once that pain of not changing is so strong that you're willing to change. And that's why it's very often not that one video or that one podcast that really changed your mind. Generally, it's that pain and that paradigm shift that was so strong. And then there you were so desperate that you went out there. I was like, now I really want to change. Now I really want to be more confident, more disciplined, more calm. I can't stand this anymore. And you change, and that change has happened. And then when you finally watch that YouTube video or listen to that podcast or read that book, you've already changed inside. And what that thing does is just gives you the extra tools. It gives you the extra tools and tips and tricks and hacks, and great, amazing. And then off you go. And then maybe a year from then, you'll be like, oh, Tony Robbins, changed my life when I saw this and did that. Tony Robbins, amazing. I'm sure he did change your life in many ways. Or Katie Stoddart changed your life because you watched this video on grit, and then from the next day, you changed your whole life around, became really gritty. The truth is, that's just a catalyst because you've made that inner transformation. You've made that change within you. You've decided, you've committed that things were going to change. And then you just learn a few tools out there. And that's kind of the easy bit. And I think sometimes this is omitted in videos or in podcasts because it's about trying to tell people, if you do these, 5 steps, 3 steps, then you'll be more disciplined, then you'll be more gritty, then you'll be this and that. But that can only happen if you've decided that the pain's intolerable. If you've decided it's a nice to have and you're still okay with that pain and you're not really willing to make an effort to change things around because it requires a lot of effort, and you prefer to just watch or listen or read things to satisfy yourself that you're making some form of progress, but it's passive, then probably nothing will change. And I know because I've been there and I've seen my clients there too. And I've also seen when I've changed and when they've changed, and there's that internal shift. So if this is not the case and you haven't changed or transformed certain areas in your life for a long time, what needs to happen? What do you need to think? How can you increase that pain so that you're no longer willing to tolerate where you're at? And then you're able to fully commit and start to take those actions and create that progress in your life and be gritty. Have that passion and perseverance for what matters most to you. I'm Katie Stoddart, conscious leadership and high performance coach, speaker, and podcaster. If this was useful for you, if you got any value from it, please like the video and share a comment below and tell me, what did you take away? What is going to help you be more gritty? How can you increase that level of pain or intolerance so you can finally take those actions and create that life that you want and the business that you want and be the sort of person you want to be in the world? Any questions, please write below. I answer every single comment on YouTube, and also check all the stats on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. If you write a review, that'd be amazing. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe, and see you in the next episode.